Renny Show is brought to you by Johnston Group, Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing, Lou Ferlin, Cambrian Credit Union, and Homefield.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after... Well, you know what? Let me switch this up. Let's do something different. Let's do a Renny hot take out of the gate here. And we all know Renny's hot takes aren't your traditional hot takes. They just become fact after a while. I'm just right with these so often that they become fact. So I'm going to throw one out here, and I'm going to say that on a night where the Jets pulled the old rope-a-dope against the New York Rangers, I'm going to go out on a limb and say by the time it's all said and done, the rope-a-dope won't be known for something that Muhammad Ali pulled off. When it's all said and done, when this Jets core is done and has its way, the rope-a-dope will be known more for the Winnipeg Jets and less for Muhammad Ali. People around the world will say you've been rope-a-doped, and they will think of Connor Hellebuyck, and they'll think of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and players like that. And then second, distant in the back of their mind, they will think, oh yeah, didn't some old boxer pull off something similar? Or didn't he try and copy the Winnipeg Jets with the rope-a-dope style? That's what's going to happen, because these Winnipeg Jets pull this off so often. It's getting ridiculous at this stage. I mean, I will say this. The Jets needed a win tonight. They needed a win. I think it's one of those times where you have to kind of just park it and say the Jets couldn't be going and losing 3 games in a row. You go on a road trip like this, especially with what's happening with all the teams that had just passed them in the standings. The Jets needed a win here, period. So it is one of those nights, and you heard this from their head coach. 2 points are 2 points. A win is a win. They've got to take that away from it. But it's funny because you see some people in the chat room here. Pat Rathwell says, so we beat the Rangers twice now. Does that make us an elite team yet? Yes, Pat. Yes. The Winnipeg Jets allowing 51 shots against their goaltender and finding a way to win that game most definitely makes them an elite team in the NHL at this stage. The thing I find that is interesting about this is I've noticed quite a bit. I don't know if it's Twitter, and Twitter is not always the place to find, the most accurate polling of how a fan base feels. But I see there's a lot of frustrated Jets fans after a game like that. And it surprises me because I thought all along that this was the kind of win that Jets fans loved. It has been in the past. I know when I started kind of railing against the idea of the Jets needing to start winning more games that they deserve to win, other than pulling out games that they maybe didn't deserve to win, people used to get, call me a downer, and they used to say that I was negative, and people, would stop me in the street and tell me I needed to smile more and things like that, because they hated it when I would point this out, and they didn't think it was valid. Now, I don't know if people are switching. I don't know if this has just happened for so many years with the Winnipeg Jets. Feels to me that the celebration is not as, vigorous as it typically is after a Jets win, especially against a team like this. You let me know how you're feeling in the chat room right now. Like, I don't know if you take a look at this and say, this is whatever it takes for the Jets to pick themselves up and dust themselves off. That's what it's going to take. Or you just take from this that this is another night that Connor Hellebuyck came in and stole a game, and that this is something that, there's no reason to think the Jets take it forward. I don't know. I don't know how this works. I think you can't look at it as a bad thing in the way that the Jets get 2 points when they desperately needed 2 points on a night where the Calgary Flames, who would be, probably a team that has to pass the Winnipeg Jets if the Winnipeg Jets were ever to fall out of the playoffs, like Maul on our show has said is most definitely going to happen, and which I have come out and said, relax, people, don't worry, that is not going to be happening. A night like this makes that a lot more likely that that's not going to happen. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know at this stage if this is a sign of a goalie picking up a team and a team turning around after this and saying, our goalie had our back. Our goalie had us covered. They got you covered, and we're going to get back for that. Or if this is just another example of Connor Hellebuyck hiding the problems, staving off the inevitable with the Winnipeg Jets. I'll tell you this, allowing 51 shots a lot of them high danger. That's no way to win a hockey game. That's no way to win in the playoffs. Connor Hellebuyck, as good as he is, cannot do this every night, but boy, oh boy, was he good on this night. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in on my main man, Kenny, to see what his take is on the whole thing. The man with the best music in the business. Here comes Ken. Ken, I will tell you, there's something that's been beefing me here ever since this game ended. I've had people sending me messages. One here, like from Richard Medeiros, who says MVP performance tonight. I don't know where Richard gets off. He messaged me during the broadcast, and I had a conversation with him trying to tell me that I'm wrong and that Josh Morrissey is not the MVP of this team. And he somehow thinks that tonight's performance by Connor Hellebuyck is evidence of that. On the biggest stage in New York, in the home of the NHL offices anyways, in the most famous arena, Connor Hellebuyck comes out and absolutely steals the show. And this is supposed to be some kind of evidence of an MVP performance. I think Richard's getting ahead of himself. I've got the feeling that you're going to jump on board with Richard, though. I don't know why. It's just a feeling. But what did you see out there tonight, Ken?
Well, a dominant performance by a netminder who felt it was important to have one. I mean, Connor has been giving the Jets a chance on virtually every night this season. He had to be very good. He had to be excellent. It's funny. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois saying he was very good, that was an understatement, and he's right. I mean, it was a dominant performance. And Sean, I mean, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, is that the formula for the Jets? No, but there are nights when another team is better than the team that is playing in front of a goalie, and sometimes the Jets need a goalie to steal a game for them. And it was an important time of the season for the Jets to do that, and Connor Hellebuyck did his part. It's interesting. I mean, there were elements that were very good for the Jets. In that game, they came out with much more energy. Their intensity level was way higher. We heard what Rick Bowness had to say, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but he basically was threatening to reduce ice time for players who didn't play with passion. And I saw a lot of guys playing with passion, so I understand the Jets got caved in on the shot clock, but it wasn't super taxing. And this wasn't what we always talk about, the San Jose game, right? When we think about 50 shots, we think about San Jose, the game at San Jose where Connor Hellebuyck was under siege and under fire. I mean, yes, he did have to save. I think it was 29 of 30 slot shots and 19 high danger chances in all situations, according to the good folks at Natural Stat Trick. But I didn't feel as though the Jets were hemmed in, and kind of hanging on for dear life. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't, that's, Pierre-Luc Dubois was quick to say, you can't lean on your goalie like that all the time. But I mean, if you want to win rounds and series, I mean, goalies have to do that once in a while. And, opportunistic scoring, as you mentioned, has been a hallmark for the Jets at times, and it was tonight. And for me, what did we spend most of yesterday's show talking about? I mean, team hadn't scored, barely more than 2 goals per game for 12 games. I mean, 28 goals in 12 games wasn't good enough. What did the Jets do today? They put up 4 against one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League, and against a goalie who, even though the Jets got 3 on 10 shots, it wasn't that Shesterkin was struggling. I mean, he stopped Kyle Connor on a breakaway. He made a couple other ridiculous saves, and, he was fine, but he was the second best goalie in the game. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck was the best goalie in the game by a sizable margin, and that's the kind of game the Jets needed. So I don't think they need to apologize. I mean, at the same time, they need to play a lot better on Wednesday, no doubt about that. But I think there were pieces of the game that the Jets would be happy with. And, most importantly, their big guns got the job done offensively. I mean, I know Mark Scheifele had a bad turnover on the only goal against, but he went back and scored an absolute beauty. I mean, this is the thing that gets me. People are going, oh, bench Scheifele. Well, Mark Scheifele's got 34 goals. I mean, mistakes are going to happen. Does he need to clean that play up? Of course. He had 2 turnovers on the same shift, including one right in front of the net. But he also produces an awful lot of offense. I mean, Sean, you're at the game covering it. I mean, how much defense did you see Artemi Panarin playing today? Not a lot, but he's a creative player, and he puts up a lot of points. Mark's effort level has been, pretty good. His puck management, at times wasn't as good today. No, AJ Jets back. He was not terrible. He scored 2 highlight reel goals. He had some issues defensively, but terrible is different. Terrible looks way different. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele had a couple of absolute beauty connections. And, of course, we always talk about this, about Scheifele and Connor. They need to get more than they gave up. Tonight, I think they got more than they gave up, even though they gave up 1. So, I mean, that's happening. Self-inflicted wounds have been prevalent the last 3 nights for the Jets, at the start of this road trip. But today they found a way to get the job done. I mean, how will this trip end? Let's find. I mean, they found a way by goaltending, but they also scored. I mean, the goal is to get more than the other team. I mean, this is the thing. Some people say, I mean, I don't think the New Jersey much like the Devils the night before, I don't think the Rangers looked tired. I mean, that probably wasn't their best game, but their speed was prevalent. They played fine. Their power play was kept under wraps by the Jets' penalty kill, which was 4 for 4. I thought they played with fire. They took a couple of, unnecessary offensive zone minors that, again, they need to clean up. But their penalty kill bailed them out, and Connor Hellebuyck basically willed his team to victory today. I mean, that's how I saw it, but I also don't think the Jets have to apologize for that. When a team is going through a rut, you find a way to try to get the job done, and they did. I mean, again, I'm not advocating for the Jets to play that style on Wednesday, but I don't think it was completely terrible. I don't think they were lackluster defensively. They need to tighten up with a few things, of course. But the Rangers are a fast team. I thought they looked, yesterday the Devils made the Jets look slow at times. I didn't think that was the same case this evening. I thought the Jets skated a lot better. Their intensity was much higher. They were engaged. And, for the most part, I think there were pieces of the game they would like a lot. And there are other things that they're going to need to clean up, which is normal. I mean, they're within a point of Dallas. I mean, they're not hanging any banners for that. But they're still in it. I mean, had the Jets lost 3 in a row, people would want to, the pitchforks would have been out again. I mean, let's see what happens on Wednesday. They go 2-2 on this trip. It's way different than having gone 0-4. I mean, the Islanders aren't going to be a pushover either, Sean. We know this. They lost Matthew Barzal, but last I checked, they were up on the Penguins. Did they finish? They closed the game out. They were up 4-2. We'll check there later. Anyways, sorry.
You're asking if the Penguins won tonight?
No, the Islanders won, right? The Islanders were up 4-2.
Yes, they won.
So, I mean, they're not going to just roll over for the Jets. They're in a playoff race as well. It's a long season. Things are going to happen. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck put the team on his back this evening. I mean, that happens. So that's what elite goaltenders are paid to do. I mean, I know you were kind of mocking someone who said earlier. I mean, no, 2 wins. This is the beauty of hockey. The Jets had 2 losses to the worst team in the league in the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have 2 wins against one of the best teams in the NHL in the Rangers. That's what happens over the course of an 82-game schedule. I mean, if you're Gerard Gallant, you're probably thrilled with 75% of the game today, right? But it didn't matter. You got no points for that, but that's a process kind of game. The Rangers think if they play that game in a 7-game series, the Rangers probably win the series 4-1 or 4-2 at the max, right? So
yeah, I can tell you this right now. I mean, I listened in. I had the headset in for Gerard Gallant's post game. He had no problem with that game for his team.
Nor should
he wasn't walking away from that game and saying we need to change this, we need to do this, we need to do that. Listen, I've got time for a lot of the arguments that people are making, and you know what? I'm kind of glad. I'm glad the people that a lot of the people are coming out who are celebrating this kind of stuff, because I love the debate. I love having this debate with people who think that this is the way, right?
Well,
the old Mandalorian. This is the way. I know you're not saying that, but there are some people in the chat room who are saying that, who are saying this is the perimeter stuff on the outside. And they really didn't have that good of chances, and the Jets had the higher chance and all that. And there weren't really that many slot shots. I think there was something like 30 high danger shots, 14 high danger shots, 30 slot shots.
19 like including the power plays. So in all situations,
19 high danger shots,
counting the power play. Yes, 5 on 5.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
5 on 5. It was 14-7.
Anyway. I've got time for this because I do think the Jets actually played really good in the zone. There weren't any backdoor tap-ins, or there weren't any no-doubters or anything like that, right? So I've got time for that. Here's what I don't have time for: the people who are saying that this is the way and this is the legitimate way to win a game. At some point, you would have thought that the Winnipeg Jets, rather than just sitting back and saying, let's just go into a shell, would decide to go out and get the puck and possess it for a while. And go and cram it down New York's throat, and spend some time in their zone, and rough them up and put them to the test. Like that, none of that happened here tonight. The Winnipeg Jets got their offense based on the fact that New York had their skis turned straight downhill, trying to solve a goaltender they couldn't solve, and then weren't ready to come back and defend the other way because the Jets got the lead, and then a goaltender absolutely stole the show. This is not the way that you get to where you're trying to go. Now, I'm the first one to say they needed 2 points tonight. How you get 2 points is 2 points, right? They got it, fine, move on with that. But I will never agree with the people in our chat room and the people in Jets World who have seen this play happen over and over and over and over and over again over the years, and think that this is the way, that think that this is somehow a way that the Jets are going to play their way into the playoffs and into success in the playoffs. It's not the way you do it. They got by with their goaltender tonight. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, it's 4-1 and it looks like that on the clock. If they get one past Connor Hellebuyck early and it's a tie game, it's an entirely different game. The Jets aren't capitalizing on the offense that they get at that point because they don't have a team that's entirely zeroed in on trying to solve a goalie that they can't solve. Now, is Connor Hellebuyck part of the Winnipeg Jets? Yes, he is. And so before I go insane, people say he's part of the team, and you know, hey, Gary Galley said it on the broadcast tonight. You never apologize for who your goaltender is. But this has been the Jets goaltender since before 2018, and the play doesn't end well when the Winnipeg Jets turn around as a team and say, let's just let them throw everything they have at Connor Hellebuyck, and we'll jump on the puck and go the other way and score a goal. It works for some games. It doesn't work over on the whole. So again, in order to elicit 2 points, it worked tonight. That's the way that worked on this night. But anyone who is celebrating this as the Jets having somehow finding a secret sauce and being the better team than the Rangers tonight are just so off base, it's not even funny.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say this. Josh Morrissey said it to me after the game, Sean. I mean, the one thing about the high volume, most of the Jets did a good job of keeping the front of the net mostly clean. There weren't a lot of screens. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck had to fight through some things. For the most part, Hellebuyck could see the majority of the shots. And as Josh Morrissey pointed out, when Hellebuyck can see it, generally Hellebuyck can stop it. So I'm not saying they want to give this volume, but I don't think he needs to apologize. I mean, occasionally an elite goalie steals a hockey game. That's what happened today.
To apologize. But here, BA Split says this isn't and hasn't been the template of this team being ninth in the NHL all year. It's one win. This is wrong. We've gone through this. We did this in one of our broadcasts. The Winnipeg Jets win an inordinate amount of games in which they are the second best team. It's happened. I mean, close to half their wins. It was 40% of their wins at one point this year. They were being outshot in those wins, and they're getting outchanced in the inner slot overall in the game in like 30% of their wins. This is very much. This is the template. BA split, you're wrong. This isn't and hasn't been the template of this team. This is quite often their template. This is the Winnipeg Jets more than almost any other team in the league finding a way to do what they did tonight. And I'm saying, fine, if that's the team, and if BA split, you think this is the way, the Mandalorian, this is the way. If you think this is the way, this is how the Jets have played in years past. And there's a lot of people out there who see it. This does not end well in the playoffs. If you think that you're going to go out in the game and put up 14 shots, I guess by the end of the game, it was 20 shots or something like that. But if you think at some point you're going to be outshot 40-14 and you are going to succeed in the playoffs like that, I guess stick to that. Let's see where it takes you. That's all I got to say. Ken, time to move on. It's time to go. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, I did want to say a lot of the comments, like BA splits, can get to, that can get up on the screen because I think you're entirely wrong. Sometimes you can be on for being entirely right. Savage 09100 knows how to get on the screen there. He says, good evening, everyone. Sean, you were looking good tonight. I appreciate that. Someone else had said to me in here that this was the nice. Oh, here we go. In Bones We Trust. Says, Renny, that was your best suit yet tonight. Just
there
saying.
You go. It's one of the new ones.
Got to throw out the fire that we get from the boys, Frankie and the boys over at Vittorio Rossi. The reason we look like this, the reason I'm getting compliments is not because I know how to dress myself. It's because Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi know how to dress me, and they know how to dress you, Ken. Phenomenal guys down there. We are so happy. Not only that they dress us, but they are a part of the Kenny and Renny podcast. Thank you so much to them. Now let's move on to the Lamplighter of the night. Ken, what did you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's only an insurance marker in terms of its importance, but given what I had said earlier about the bad turnover by Scheifele on the Rangers' goal from Vincent Trocheck, his give and go and ridiculous backhand shelf backhander past Igor Shesterkin is the Lamplighter. I mean, it's one of those vintage plays that we've seen from Scheifele and Connor. Scheifele kind of drags to the middle, flips it over to the boards. Connor finds Scheifele. And rather than try to get it onto his forehand and rip it, he absolutely, it's a Mike Keane backhand clapper almost. I mean, absolutely beautiful backhand, 34th goal of the year for Scheifele. And it was important because if the Rangers get that to 3-2, based on how the Jets have played in third periods the last two games, all bets are off. So I think that's my choice. I mean, there were a couple of good options in this game, but I would definitely say, we're going to talk about Josh Morrissey in a bit, but I think the Scheifele goal is my Lamplighter personally.
Yeah, I've got all day for that. I'm on board with it. And hey, if you're on board with it, why don't you share us and tell us that that's your Lamplighter? But if you think that maybe it was Josh Morrissey's puck that I think ended up going to Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I thought had a phenomenal game, we're going to have to talk about him, or any of the other goals here tonight, share that with us. Tell us about your Lamplighter, and you are automatically entered to win an 8-pack of frosty, delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale from our friends at Transcanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to hand you your own 8-pack, head on down and get one of your own at Transcanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 11290 Kenniston. Great pizza, great beer. They got it all. Head on down there, check it out. Ken, let's hop right into the Got You Covered play of the game as well. Brought to you by our friends at Johnston Group.
Yeah, buddy, this time I'm ready for you. I marked a few down during the course of the game, and one of them you used on the broadcast. It will be the, I believe, derriere save by Dylan DeMello. Vincent Trocheck, again, who was all over the place in this game today, took a sweeping backhand rebound attempt, and Dylan DeMello had his hockey pants facing Trocheck, and I believe after Hellebuyck had stopped one with his mask, I believe, DeMello took care of the rest and prevented a sure goal, and that's why it was my choice for the We've Got You Covered play of the game, sponsored by the OGs at the Johnston Group.
Yeah, I got to tell you, here's a little bit about the behind-the-scenes stuff, I got to say. So during the game, I see that happen, and it jogs my memory that this has happened a number of times by Dylan DeMello throughout this season. I remember one was a game saver right at the end. I believe the same game is that Buffalo where Connor Hellebuyck also picks the puck out of the air in between his heels like Dorothy on Wizard of Oz, saying there's no place like home. And so I give Ken a little bit of a text, and I ask him if he can remember which games those happened in. I got to say, I gave the people in the truck a heads up. They found it pretty quick. And that's how live TV kind of comes together quickly like that. And we were able to show you that pack of the times this season that Dylan DeMello has stolen goals away from the goal line. Boy, oh boy, I love the way Dylan DeMello plays. I love that hand-eye coordination that he has to steal that puck away earlier, like they showed in the Buffalo game. What I love about him, Ken, is this sense that he gets that there's danger afoot, and what he does is he just collapses into the net and says, okay, there's a couple more square feet that Connor Hellebuyck doesn't have to worry about in this situation. It's pretty simple. I wonder why we don't see it happen more often. I think the answer to that is not as easy as it looks. I think it's a little bit of a high IQ play to know where to go in that net so that you're not getting in the way of your goaltender. Dylan DeMello seems to be able to find the space that Connor Hellebuyck is in and has taken care of, and understand this other space that he can take away. All that said, I think tonight's was a little bit more of a fluke play, but I've got all the time in the world for him as being the Johnson Group Got You Covered play of the game, brought to you by the Kenny and Renny OGs at the Johnson Group. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnson Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, I know people have been talking about it. The interview that I had at the end of the game with Connor Hellebuyck, had a little bit of fun with him. I asked him a question I knew that he'd get a little bit of a chuckle out of, and he gave me a great answer. Basically, I said to him, there are rules that exist on why goaltenders are not supposed to be playing back-to-back games. Remind me what those rules are and tell me why they do not apply to you. And he kind of chuckled about it and said, I don't know what those rules exist. I can't tell you what they are. I love playing in back-to-backs, and he sure showed it here tonight. Another interview I had at the beginning of the game was with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and one of the questions that I asked him, and you and I texted a little bit about this, the bench interview, I hope everybody caught it. I'd asked him about his own game and where he felt that it was compared to where he wanted to be, and he very bluntly, in the middle of the warm-up, and these can be dicey questions to ask during the warm-up. Be in the middle of the warm-up, said his game isn't where he wants it to be, but he knows what he needs to do, and now he's just got to execute. I thought he went out and absolutely backed it up tonight. Ken, what did you see from Pierre-Luc Dubois?
Yeah, tremendous game. I got a couple notes already so far. I asked Pierre-Luc in the final question of the scrum today. I said, your ice time was down a bit yesterday. I wondered if he had seen that or viewed it as a message sent by Rick Bowness, given his comments to us today that he controls ice time, and when guys aren't playing, he needs them to play with passion or else he's going to have to reduce their ice time. Pierre-Luc said, that's the coach's decision. I get paid to play. That's it. Some people saw it as him being ticked off. I didn't view that necessarily. I expected that to be that kind of an answer. The only thing that matters is how he plays. It doesn't matter what he says. I thought he was excellent today. He was back to his normal self. He was much more engaged. The one minor penalty probably he could have lived without. It was an offensive zone penalty. But his engagement was way higher than the game against the Devils. And he was excellent. There's no doubt about it. Rick Bowness loved the response. And, Pierre-Luc did exactly what he told you he needed to do. 5 points in 12 games when his team was struggling to score goals was not good enough. And he elevated his game by getting to the net, which is where he feasts, right? That's where he gets a good chunk of his points. And when you're willing to go there, usually good things happen. His ice time was not quite at the normal level, Sean. It was finished at 15:24, but with the Jets taking the 4 minor penalties, they essentially took 8 minutes of available ice time away in that situation. So I thought Dubois was excellent. I love the fact, I like the way the lines were put together. This is something that we talked about a ton last year, Sean. When Pierre-Luc Dubois is carrying the puck and bringing people to him, I think that
Yes.
he can utilize Nikolai Ehlers' speed much in the same way that Kyle Connor can operate in that regard when he's been in that pairing with Dubois for a good chunk of the last 2 years. And Blake Wheeler was on that line today as well. I think that line had its moments. And, I thought his game overall was absolutely excellent. How about yourself?
Well, you mentioned it. You talked about it drawing people into him. What I saw from him tonight is he picked up the puck and he just skated with speed through the neutral zone. And you can see what happens is he just unabashedly takes it right up the middle. But he kind of does this little wave back and forth as he's doing it. And what he does is he just kind of draws both defenders closer into him, because all of a sudden one is getting ready to engage him, because you have to be ready to engage him because he's so big and strong. If he decides to go in your direction, you kind of got to get prepared for him. And he just all night, I thought, just drew people into him, dished that puck off. Another thing I liked about it, Ken, one of the things that I wanted to see, we had these conversations about, you wonder how much the Jets like the new power play units, and you wonder how much they like their new lines. And the thing that I always think about when that happens is like, well, if you don't like the lines, then you probably should have done well on the line that you liked and the line you had, right? Like, you had your opportunity. Don't be upset that you have someone that you think is on your line that shouldn't be on your line. You had your opportunity. So one of the things that I liked is one of the goals that the Jets score tonight is Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois get on the ice at the same time, and they make it happen. And that's what I think. That's how you get on the line you want to get on. You get those little shoulder shifts where one guy who's not on your line gets on the ice and you're on as well. You think you've got chemistry with that player. Show in that little flash of time that you have that chemistry. They showed that tonight, and I thought that was an important step for the Winnipeg Jets on this night. I thought that Mark Scheifele really, really, really showed tonight, Ken, that he wants to be on a line with Kyle Connor. I thought Kyle Connor woke up tonight, off Mark Scheifele well. This is the kind of stuff that you want to see. We've talked about this in the past. How much of these lines that Rick Bowness has been putting together are, wow, I actually think this is going to work? And how much of these lines coming together has been Rick Bowness essentially saying, listen, I'm sending you a message. You're not doing this. You're not going to the net enough. So I'm going to put Saku Menelainen on your line because I know he'll go to the net and he's going to drag you to the net with him. You don't like that? Well, just start playing like that. Remember, we haven't heard it for so long, Ken, but remember this Winnipeg Jets team was supposed to be at their best when all four lines looked and played like each other.
It's been a while.
Heard that for a long time. And the lines have really kind of not really looked like anything. But I thought tonight it was important. If you are the Winnipeg Jets, if you're Kyle Connor, if you're Mark Scheifele, if you're Pierre-Luc Dubois, if you're Nikolai Ehlers, if you want to play with a guy, then when the coach gives you an opportunity to play with a specific player, you better take that opportunity to make it happen tonight. And yes, I said earlier in this conversation that, no, I don't like this. I don't like that the Jets didn't push back more. Yeah, they went out and they got their goals when that happened, but there was no point in this game where they just basically went and grabbed the puck and said, you guys think you can do this to us all game? That's not going to happen. I didn't see that kind of pushback, but I did see in the moments where there were chemistry with players that they flashed the chemistry. It's important to flash the chemistry for a team that can't score, because tonight they showed that they can score, and I thought that one of the reasons they showed they could score is because they were so hungry to prove to their coach who they wanted to play with and who they wanted opportunities going forward with. And I think they showed that tonight, and I think it's a good thing heading forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we've been talking about, and I talked about it on the pregame show with John Shannon and Kelly Moore. I mean, the Jets need to find a line for Nikolai Ehlers, or he needs to, impose his will to be on a line, whoever that's with, whether that's with Pierre-Luc Dubois or Mark Scheifele. He just needed more minutes. So today, Ehlers' minutes were still, relatively low, 13 and change. But, he got things going on the power play. I thought he was moving his feet better. And overall, it was a step in the right direction. I mean, you're right. I mean, Mark Scheifele has had a number of different line mates this year. Hasn't played a lot with Kyle Connor. Started the year with Kyle Connor, but hasn't played a lot with him. And today, those guys had their chemistry set working very well. A lot of the same things we still talked about were happening. Third and fourth lines, not a lot of generation there. They need more. But, overall, I thought Sam Gagner did a nice job coming into the lineup. And, Sean, this is one of the most shocking developments that I've seen. Sam Gagner, take a wild stab at how many NHL fights Sam Gagner has now had after dropping the gloves with Vincent Trocheck. And I'm going to give you a hint. It's more than you think.
Okay, I'm going to say...
It's a super stumper for you.
I'm going to say 11 fights.
Oh, did you look it up?
No, I didn't.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
11
I'm right?
fights. Nice
Okay.
job. Man, I set you up nicely for that one. That's the equivalent of me finding you for the backdoor tap-in right there.
There we
On
go.
a Friday afternoon at River Heights right there. There you go.
I'm going to tell you a funny little story about this. So we're in
Feisty
MSG.
Sam Gagner.
We're in MSG, and clearly the Winnipeg Jets are just going to leave and go out and enjoy the city tonight. They're probably not on tomorrow, so it's not the situation where everyone's hopping on a team bus. Guys were kind of all over the building. I had a little bit of trouble finding my way up to you here, Ken, and so I rode the elevator up and down.
Oh, geez.
Oh, no, look at this. I rode the elevator up and down for quite a long time today, and to try and figure it out. And as I was riding down before I was heading back up, Sam Gagner ends up hopping on the elevator. And those who don't know, Ken will know this, but those who don't know, Sam Gagner is just about as nice a person as you could possibly meet in your life. Right off the bat, crowded elevator, gives me a heads up. But he gets on, and he just happens to be getting on the elevator with his sister. His sister lives in New York City. His sister is an actress in New York City. Boy, oh boy, great parents that had their kids follow their dreams, no doubt.
Love it.
But she came to school in New York and now lives here. I had a little interesting conversation with her. Was she in town for Sam's 1,000th game in Winnipeg? Yes, she was. Did she leave her heart in Winnipeg? No, she didn't. She didn't wanted to make sure she didn't have to come pick it up afterwards. But I'd asked her about the fight. She'd said, it's not one of the things that I like to watch. And it got me thinking. I didn't go look things up, but it got me thinking a little bit more often that, I can now remember Sam Gagner having got in some fights. And her response to that was clearly his sister doesn't like the fights, doesn't like to see him getting in them. And he's got in enough of them for her to not want to see them. Great family.
7
great
with
guy.
The Oilers, buddy. 7.
Yeah. There
7
you go.
fights with the Oilers.
Well, he took 2 turns there. That's where the majority of his games are, is it not, in Edmonton?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That's a lot of fights.
Well, when you're younger, you kind of got to carve your way out in the league, especially in the league that he came into, right? Don't you think? That's an interesting one. I never got to tell this story. We should tell it about Jacob Trouba today.
Sure.
You and I were chatting with him. You and Mikey had a lot longer conversation with him. I had to bail out and go talk to some other people. But I had asked him if, I said, listen, I don't want to besmirch your time with the Winnipeg Jets, but is it not fairly obvious that you hit a lot more and have a lot more devastating hits now that you're with New York? And his idea was, or he'd said, most definitely that's the case. I said, well, why is it? He says, I'm not going looking for them. He thinks it's that the league is changing, right? He thinks that as the league changes and gets smaller, and this was the story we did on Sportsnet a little while ago, for the first time a couple of years ago, the average weight of an NHLer dropped below 200 pounds for the first time since the early 90s. So Jacob Trouba is not getting bigger per se in that he's growing or getting bigger and stronger, but he is getting bigger because the league is getting smaller, and Jacob Trouba thinks that may have something to do with the idea of why he's laying so much bigger and devastating hits nowadays, because the average NHLer is getting smaller and he's just that much bigger. It goes to the point that at one time when he was coming into the league, Sam Gagner, I think you were still expected to carve out your space in that league back then. So no doubt I wouldn't be surprised at all that he would have fought more earlier in his career with the Edmonton Oilers. That league doesn't exist anymore. I mean, we haven't had to see a guy like Cole Perfetti skate around and carve out his space on the ice in the NHL. A much different time when Sam Gagner started playing the first of his thousands of games, or 1,000th plus games.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple of quick things there, and I know that the folks have been asking in the chat room, and Sean, we were both part of the conversation with Rick Bowness. I have no idea why Rick was so guarded when it came to information about Cole Perfetti, but I can assure the people and the conspiracy theorists that are out there This was not Cole Perfetti being held out for trade-related reasons.
It was not.
This is not a Jacob Chikrin or Vladislav Gavrikov situation. Cole Perfetti got hurt in the game against the Devils. I did see him, and I'm guessing you did also. He was standing outside the Jets' room. I didn't see a sling. I didn't see anything. I saw him with both hands in his jacket. So we don't know the severity of the injury. But this isn't a phantom injury because the Jets are trying to be concerned about over trade value or anything else. Just because you see a rumor that involves a player doesn't mean that the player is going anywhere or is being held out. Cole got hurt. I mean, if I had to take if I had to take an educated guess, I would imagine he has an injury that is perhaps related to what we thought was a shoulder problem that kept him out earlier this year. Rick Bowness was very guarded. I called it intentionally vague in my story. He didn't want to talk about what happened, when it happened, how long he'll be out, when he'll be looked at again, could he be an option Wednesday. Rick Bowness had no interest in any of those questions. I think he probably wished we had moved on. But, I mean, when a top 6 player is not going to be in the lineup, it's news. And you'd like to know, I understand it's that time of year where things are going to be quiet and everything else, right, Sean? But, I mean, it seemed a little bit odd to me that Rick was so guarded. And it was also guarded that he didn't say who was coming out for Logan Stanley today. Didn't you think that was also odd? Especially if it was Sandberg.
It was super odd.
The guy that he's in competition with. I mean, if it was that simple, just say it. I mean, we understand, and we've talked about it the last while. I mean, Dylan Sandberg's best game was on Saturday. I thought he was pretty solid. Sorry, not Saturday. Wednesday in Columbus. I thought he was solid in the game. Sorry, Thursday in Columbus. My calendar is off. The game Sunday, he was solid also. I mean, if that was, Rick not wanting to say that, he's taking a good player out of the lineup, then fine. But it led me to believe that he was maybe considering, sitting out one of his veterans in order to bring Logan Stanley in. But regardless, Rick said after the game, it's just he didn't want to have him sitting down, and we'll move on after that. But on another unrelated note, I thought that I know you didn't stick around because you were, gathering information with other people, but you saw it in the time that we spent with Jacob today.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend a ton of time discussing it, and I'll have a story on sportsnet.ca tomorrow. But man, this is a guy who is so comfortable in his surroundings, so much maturity. We know what kind of leader he's grown into with this team. We heard how, Gerard Gallant was gushing about him, talked about how, the game where he got into a fight and threw his helmet against Chicago kind of got their season turned around. And yeah, I mean, it's impressive to see, and it's a story that I look forward to writing because this is a guy who's really, it's natural. He's going to be 29 this month. He's grown up a lot, matured, and he's really flourishing here after a really tough first season. When he admitted, when you sign a big ticket contract like that, and you're coming off a 50+ point season. Now he's got to the situation where he knows Adam Fox is the offensive driver. He focuses on the shutdown part of the game, still contributes some offense, and is just an excellent leader. And, quite frankly, the Jets miss a lot of the qualities that Jacob Trouba brings to the table. And that's a natural segue to Josh Morrissey. But we should probably go. Let's go Lou quickly here. We'll go.
Sure.
Quick hit, 44 minutes.
Why don't you give a shout out to both he and Kenny?
Okay, bang them both out in the same thing. For the folks in the realty market, whether you're buying, selling, just curious what the house down the street's worth, or maybe looking to move to another neighborhood, you can contact Lou Ferlin of Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. He can be reached at 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's Lou at LOUFURLAN.ca. And Lou's email or website is www.louferlin.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this show, which we are very proud to have him on board. And speaking of community engagement, we're proud to be sponsored by a local organization that supports our communities, Cambrian Credit Union. In 2022, Cambrian committed over $350,000 in donations and sponsorships to organizations who strengthen our communities in the areas of arts and culture, community care, health and wellness, financial literacy, and education. If you know of a local organization that could use additional support this year in 2023, consider applying for funding by visiting their website at cambrian.mb.ca and searching donations. You can also find them on social media by searching the hashtag Cambrian Communities. That's hashtag CAMBRIAN capital COMMUNITIES. Sean, both of us are proud members at Cambrian Credit Union, and we know they're doing fantastic things both in the branches and especially in the community.
You betcha. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to pick up where you left off. Josh Morrissey, not the MVP of the Winnipeg Jets on this night. I will admit to at least I will at least admit to that. But I will say this, and I was having a conversation with Richard Medeiros about this while the game was happening. It says a lot on a night where Josh Morrissey, scored I guess he didn't score the first goal, but he got the ball rolling. He's the main reason that first goal goes in. So once again, at a time when the Jets needed to get going, Josh Morrissey was there to get them going. And on a night where Josh Morrissey sets the record for the most points by a Winnipeg Jets defenseman in a single season with how many games left to go here? We're at 25 games left to go, is it, Ken, at this stage? Wow, this is going to be something for him. Great job by him. But I will say this, on this night, not the MVP, I still think that this is a pretty good horse race between he and Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck definitely took a sprint down the back end tonight here, though. But I wanted to talk about Morrissey versus Fox, because you brought him up here on this night. I personally think that these kind of games are important. I think the people who vote on these awards, I think it's their responsibility on nights like this to try and take these games in and see what these players look like head to head. I think it's important because if you take a look at another guy who would be in this conversation, Jonathan Dahlen, the first game that the Buffalo Sabres played the Winnipeg Jets, I thought Josh Morrissey showed he was the better of those two defensemen. But the next time they played, Jonathan Dahlen had a phenomenal game.
Rasmus. You got that.
Rasmus,
Dahlen, all good.
I got the Dahlen right. I think people knew who I was talking about. Rasmus was the better of the two the next night out. So I loved that I got to see those two players go head to head, because I thought I saw the best of Josh Morrissey on one night and I thought I saw the best of Rasmus Dahlen on another night. Tonight here, to me, it looks clear and evident from what I've seen that Josh Morrissey is the more capable of those two defenders. Anyone who's out there, and I don't know about you, Ken, but we're starting to see it happen. We're starting to see a real push for Fox, trying to get him into the Norris conversation. I don't see him at the same level as Josh Morrissey defensively. I don't see him at the same level as Josh Morrissey offensively. I think games like this matter when they go head-to-head, because I think, just like Connor Hellebuyck tonight, who stared across the ice at the most recent Vezina Trophy winner, I think part of him went out and said, yeah, I'm going to show the hockey world tonight on a national game who is the better of the two goaltenders right now. And he went out and he did it. I thought Josh Morrissey did the same thing if we're talking about defensemen against Adam Fox.
Yeah, I think Adam Fox is having a solid season, but tonight Morrissey was the better D-man, no doubt about that. I think Fox is improved his defensive play. But I thought Morrissey was excellent today, Sean. There's no doubt about that. I thought he was very good on a lot of, in all fronts. And, they got the power play going. That's something we've been talking about. The power play has been struggling. No doubt about it. And, they needed to, quite frankly. And, shot, good puck movement, good shot, goes in off Dubois, and it's point number 57. Josh was very, it was really a big point of pride for him to get to 57 points and to pass Dustin Byfuglien, who was his first partner. We know the story about how Dustin Byfuglien went to Paul Maurice and said, give me the kid, I want him to play on my partnership. And he did. And he was really, took a lot of pride and thanked Dustin Byfuglien for all the things that he, showed him in terms of showing the ropes as he broke into the NHL and things of that nature.
I want to touch on something that you were talking about before. I think this is really interesting. You talked about kind of the quietness of Rick Bowness, who really, the hallmark of him earlier on and for most of the season has been very bluntly honest. It feels like that honesty and that bluntness is starting to kind of slip away. I thought, as you were talking about it before the game, it was definitely evident that he was not sharing as much as he typically would share. Even after the game, this is the kind of game in the past that Rick Bowness would come out and say, look, we can't be doing that. We can't be hanging our goaltender out on a night like tonight. This was one of those nights where he kind of just said, happy to get the 2 points. That was the message that he wanted to get across. What do you take away from the idea that the, heavy dose of blunt criticism and truth serum that we have become to know Rick Bowness for seems to be fading as the year is going on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't have a full theory, but it's interesting to see the change in tact, I guess, if you will. We talked about it yesterday. I mean, he thought the focus had to clearly be on his own team, which is accurate. But, after spending the majority of the year saying how, they're in this battle for first place and with that comes a responsibility, it almost seemed like he was kind of pushing back in terms of the expectations, not in terms of the internal expectations, but in terms of talking about them publicly, almost as though that battle with Dallas had become a bit of a burden, which is interesting because we've talked about that a lot, about expectations over the last couple of years where, there weren't really, there were great expectations last year the Jets didn't live up to. And then this year there were, minimal expectations from the majority of the folks outside the market. And suddenly they're in a battle for first place. So I think it was almost like, when you're a jockey in the race, you kind of, instead of going to the, in the old school days, they don't do it anymore very often, but instead of going to the whip, it felt like he was just letting the horses run at a regular pace and seeing what was going to happen with them, I guess, if you will. So I certainly found it interesting. In terms of the guardedness, that was a little bit strange for Rick. He's been so direct over the course of the year. He's still pretty direct. I mean, after the game today, Sean, he was asked about Mark Scheifele's response after the turnover, and he said, hey, that's the way you like to see a guy respond. If you give one up, you got to get it back, and, that's what Mark Scheifele did. But I'll be curious. I mean, we're always kind of looking for clues. I know, Sean, you're big on body language. For me, I'm super interested to see, A, how the Jets respond on Wednesday, and B, what kind of, where will we be seeing the massaging and where are we going to be seeing the, the metaphorical cracking of the whip when it comes to Rick Bowness and how he assesses, some things.
You know what? The thing that stands out to me, and you and I and Mike had a conversation as we were traveling out to, what a fun train ride.
Oh, man,
too.
what a great day.
That was neat. Heading out to the practice facility, which is way outside New York, had this conversation about this. The thing that I find interesting about all of this is Rick Bowness came in, and for us, it was a breath of fresh air to have a coach who would actually tell you what you were seeing on the ice, right? The Jets had a bad game tonight. If they had a bad game, he'd come out and he'd say, yeah, we had a bad game tonight. Whereas we were used to a coach for years who would come out and say, oh, I liked that game, or however it would go. We know it was power of positivity, Paul Maurice, but it was power of positivity in a way that he just couldn't tell you what you were actually seeing on the ice. And then Rick Bowness came out and he was blunt and he was honest and he was like that with his players, and he wasn't afraid to be critical where criticism was due and where it had been earned by those players. And the players seemed to really respond to it. And it just seemed like it was like, and that's how the Winnipeg Jets season went. And it was great. And it was, everyone locked hands and it was great. Well, the Winnipeg Jets, I think it was easy early on because things were going so well that when their coach was on them and being critical, and they weren't, going on losing streaks, and they'd come back and win the next game, it felt like, yeah, great. We responded really well. Everything's fine. The interesting part about it right now is the Winnipeg Jets, before this game tonight, some people are ready to hang up the mission accomplished banner after giving up 51 shots on a night like tonight. I'm not ready to do it. But before this, over the last 12 games, the Winnipeg Jets, I talked about it in my opening, they were a sub 500 team, 2 games under 500 in their previous 12 games. And only 3 of those games were against teams above the playoff line. This is a time that the Jets should have been sprinting up the standings, and instead they've found a way to fall. It's not a very good thing. And So I think what we're seeing for the first time is we're seeing how the Winnipeg Jets are responding to that harsh criticism when things aren't going well, right? When all of a sudden, and Josh Morrissey touched on this. I don't know how many people remember or watched the post-game interview I had with them after that comeback win right before the break that they had against St. Louis, but he admitted to there being tension between the players, between the coaching staff, between the media. He admitted to all that. And you have to wonder how a team that for so many years has been shielded from all this by one coach, and now you get another coach who comes in and says, yeah, no, you're not playing well, you're playing bad, you need to play better. Well, when you turn around and play better right away, it doesn't hurt so much. But when the Jets have kind of been mired in a hole, which they pretty much have been for the last month, I think that starts to sting a little bit more. And I think what we're seeing from Rick Bowness is a sensing that him being hard on his players at this time, they're not taking it well. And I think what we're seeing from him is learning the psychology of his team, and that his team maybe needs a little bit of that power of positivity at a time like this. That's what I take away from it, because Rick Bowness is definitely not talking like he did in the past. Tonight's response to that game was nowhere near what his response to that game would have been a couple months ago. I think he is in the process of trying to build this team's confidence back up, and has decided at some point that telling them how poorly they're playing probably isn't helping that. And maybe that Rick Bowness will return at some point, the one who is highly critical and gets on his players with the expectation they turn it around tomorrow. But I think he's realizing right now, to get the Jets back to where he wants them to be, it's not a snap them back to attention in one day. It's going to be a little bit of a process that's going to take a little bit more care and a little bit more babying, for lack of a better word. That's what I'm taking away from the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And just one quick thing, and again, could be nothing, could be something, but again, we're looking for clues. It's that time of year. The Jets had Kevin Cheveldayoff, they had Larry Simmons and Craig Eisinger, two assistant general managers, were all in the building today. And for what it's worth, and again, like I said, it could be nothing, but while we were in the room doing interviews, Kevin Cheveldayoff took some time to go over to head equipment manager Jason McMaster to have a quick conversation. I mean, I don't know if that means someone's coming in, someone's going out. I have no idea. Doesn't mean it's a trade. It could be a regular call-up. Could be just having to get someone's equipment ready for something else. But, we'll continue to keep our eyes and ears peeled. But the Jets are going to be off on Tuesday, so we're not expecting any kind of news unless something is announced by the team, or in case a deal comes together at some point. And like I said, I'm not saying there is one coming together, and we'll just see how it goes. I mean, we're getting close to the the witching hour, for lack of a better term, since we're both stuck in the dark here. And another interesting thing to monitor, Sean, at trade deadline time here, Vegas Golden Knights officially putting Mark Stone on LTIR, so that's a situation that we'll be monitoring also. We know that the Vegas Golden Knights have been a team that have been occasionally linked to Timo Meier, or that would in the short term they have room with Stone going on LTI. Long term, that could be a bit of a challenge in terms of juggling with the salary cap. But I mean, we know that Vegas has made room for players before. Patrick Kane, I think, is a guy they would have some interest in and have been watching. And he would for a team that hasn't scored enough during the playoff runs, Patrick Kane would make a lot of sense for them too as well. And we'll be monitoring the Patrick Kane situation as well. And and one thing that I just got to get out, I meant to do it the last two games. Thoughts are with Paul Gerard's family. Sean, I mean, passed away earlier in the week, and it was really, it was touching to hear Brendan Dillon talk about him. For myself personally, I got to, I had to have a couple conversations. I don't say I know Paul Gerard well. Whenever he would roll through the American League or when he was in the NHL, always tried to say hello and have conversations with him. Incredibly passionate individual, proud Winnipegger, and just someone that touched a lot of lives, had a huge impact on players and people. And I'd meant to mention his name, and our condolences go out to his entire family and those in the hockey community that knew him well. He was a great human being, and he will be greatly missed.
You talked about him touching lives. I got a text after he passed away from my good friend Aaron Wold, who I played hockey with for years, a great hockey player. He said, this was my next door role model growing up. So absolutely sad. So you're right. Touched a lot of lives, a lot that we see in the league and a lot that we don't see, you know, people around the game of hockey in Winnipeg, no doubt. Oh, I just wanted to say something here because someone talked about it. Or Eric Orleson said Winnipeg also gets reference from The Simpsons a lot too. So I'm bringing this up because I actually had this conversation with someone from New York. The reason why Winnipeg always shows up in The Simpsons, I don't know how many people know this, but Matt Groening, the creator of the series, his dad was actually from Winnipeg, and Homer Simpson, the character, is based on his dad. So Homer Simpson is essentially a Winnipegger. So why you hear the back to Winnipeg and those kind of things in the show. The reason Winnipeg is top of mind is because that was the hometown of a guy's dad. So like for me, Dryden, Ontario, I know all about Dryden, Ontario, because that's where my old man was from. So that's that situation. Time to lock things down here. Give me just 1 second because I need to find it before we move on with this. Oh my goodness. I'm having a hard time finding my home field comment. Is there anything you'd like to say, Ken, before we shut this down?
No, I'm like I said, just curious to see how the Jets respond next. Like you said, I mean, they know that they got an unbelievable performance from their netminder. They'll need to be a lot better on Wednesday, but when a team is struggling to get wins, and as you mentioned, Sean, especially wins against really good teams, they'll take them any way they can get them, and then they have to try to build on some of the other things that they weren't good enough at. Special teams, they were excellent, and 5-on-5, they got 3 goals. So they have some things they would like to do better, obviously, but there's pieces of the template that they can sort of put down as the foundation and then see what happens from there.
Okay, before I go on, I forgot to announce our Lamplighter winner. That would be FRW 546. You won the Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale from the last show, so you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds, your full name and an email. I can send you that too. And you too will have your own Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. And it is also time to throw a spotlight on the comments that stand out for the Home Field Dig Deeper Award. And tonight it is going to Richard Medeiros, who says, thank you, Krakens, the Seattle Kraken, for picking Appleton over DeMello. Ken, I remember you and I having this conversation and being absolutely baffled and dumbfounded that the Seattle Kraken did not take Dylan DeMello when this happened. I had wondered if the Winnipeg Jets had heard at some point through the scouts that Dylan DeMello was not on their list or that they wouldn't be taking him. It was the only thing that made sense to me, that they would have exposed him. Clearly, they got Mason Appleton back. Wasn't a fit with them. He sure is a fit with the Winnipeg Jets, so it all has turned out. But something tells me that had Dylan DeMello been taken by the Seattle Kraken, he would not have found his way back to Winnipeg. So congratulations, Richard Medeiros. Thank you for your winning comment. And just like Richard Medeiros, Home Field is always going to dig deeper to find the best marketing solution for your company. Find out how at myhomefield.ca. Throw the logo up from our friends at Home Field who do such a great job. And of course, Richard Medeiros, all you have to do is get a hold of me. I know you have my contact information because you're contacting me right in the middle of the show today, and I've always got time for my good friend Richard Medeiros. So send me your full name, I know what it is, and an email, I know what that is too. And I'm going to send you a voucher for your very own Kenny and Renny Home Field trunk shovel. It's the best. Better get it while the snow's still in the city. Great job by you. Great job by the rest of the chat room. Great job by you, Ken. And I got to say this, as I always do before I end the show, is if you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep these conversations going in this space for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, TransCanada Brewing Company, the Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, Home Field, and of course, Cambrian Credit Union. Welcome back to them. Thank you so much, everybody. A day off in New York for Ken and I tomorrow. After that, we are back with a Sportsnet Wednesday night hockey broadcast between the Winnipeg Jets and the New York Islanders. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you then.